The sun was slowly sinking behind the broken skyline of Gaza, painting the sky with deep orange and fading gold. Smoke from distant strikes still lingered in the air, mixing with dust and the smell of burned concrete. Streets that once echoed with life were now quiet, as if the city itself was holding its breath. In a narrow lane, away from the main road, stood a small, aging mosque built of pale stone. Its walls were cracked by years of war, its minaret chipped, its wooden doors scarred by shrapnel. Yet, as evening approached, a soft calm gathered around it. Inside the mosque, a small group of Muslims had assembled for prayer. They were ordinary people, an elderly man with trembling hands, two women wrapped in worn shawls, a young boy standing beside his father, and a few men whose faces showed the weight of long nights and short hopes. There was no electricity, no microphone, no decoration except a faded prayer rug and a simple shelf holding a few copies of the Quran. Still, their hearts were steady. One by one, they stood shoulder to shoulder, facing the same direction, lifting their hands with quiet resolve. The Imam, a gentle man with a lined face and a calm voice, stepped forward. He did not speak of safety or victory, he spoke of patience. He spoke of truth. "O Allah," he said softly, "we do not ask you to remove the trial. We ask you to strengthen us within it. Keep our hearts firm. Keep our faith alive." The words settled into the room like warm light. Outside, the wind brushed against the walls, carrying distant echoes of boots and engines, reminders that the world beyond the door was restless and unforgiving. As the prayer began, fear loosened its grip. Foreheads touched the ground. Tears fell silently onto the rugs. In that small space, time seemed to slow. The mosque did not feel weak or forgotten. It felt watched over. The Quran rested quietly on its shelf, pages worn by hands that had turned them again and again in search of meaning. For these worshippers, faith was not a slogan. It was breath. It was survival. Unseen by those inside, a group of armed soldiers moved through the nearby streets. They wore uniforms and carried rifles, their faces hard with authority. They were Muslims by name, but power had hardened their hearts. Whispers passed between them as they noticed the lightless mosque. "They gather again," one said. "They should not." Another answered, "End it quickly." To them, prayer looked like defiance. Humility looked like weakness. Back inside, the final supplication rose. Hands lifted, voices trembled. The Imam concluded, "O Allah, this is your house. We are your servants." The words hung in the air, unseen but heavy with meaning. Outside, footsteps drew closer. Inside, the worshippers remained still, unaware that the night was about to test the truth of what they had just spoken. The soldiers moved carefully through the narrow streets, their boots scraping against broken stone and scattered debris. The city around them was silent but not asleep. Behind shattered windows, eyes watched and quickly turned away. People in Gaza had learned that curiosity could be dangerous. The men carried rifles across their chests and spoke in low voices, sharp and controlled. They were not outsiders. They spoke the same language, wore the same faith on their tongues, yet something in them had grown distant from mercy. Their leader walked at the front, his posture stiff with authority. He believed order was created through fear and obedience through force. To him, gatherings like the one in the small mosque were not acts of worship, but signs of resistance. He had been told that such places made people soft, that they weakened control. Faith should serve power, he once said, not stand above it. Tonight, he intended to remind everyone who ruled these streets. One of the younger officers glanced toward the mosque as its dark outline came into view. It looked harmless, old, damaged, barely standing. "It's just a few people praying," he muttered. The leader stopped and turned sharply. "Prayer can be more dangerous than weapons," he replied. "It teaches men to bow to something higher than us." The younger officer said nothing more, but his stomach tightened. He remembered his mother praying late at night, whispering words that sounded like hope. He pushed the memory away. They paused at the corner, shadows stretching long under the moonlight. Another soldier pulled a small bottle of fuel from his pack, testing its weight in his hand. "We scare them," he said. "They won't come back." No one spoke of killing. That was not necessary. Fear, they believed, was enough. Fear would empty the mosque. Fear would keep people silent. Inside the mosque, the worshippers had finished their prayer and remained seated, heads bowed, hearts calm. The air felt unusually still, as if the walls themselves were listening. The imam sensed something but did not move. He closed his eyes again, whispering verses under his breath. A child leaned against his father, already half asleep. To them, the night was like many others, tense, uncertain, but held together by trust in Allah. Outside, the soldiers advanced. One raised his rifle and struck the wooden door. The sound echoed sharply through the street. Another kick followed, harder this time. The door shuddered but did not break. Irritation flickered across the leader's face. "Enough," he said coldly. "Finish it." The bottle of fuel was raised, the cap loosened. Just before it could be thrown, a sudden gust of wind swept through the alley. It was stronger than before, cutting and sharp, lifting dust into the air. The flame from a lighter flickered wildly, nearly going out. The men exchanged uneasy glances. "Just the wind," someone muttered, forcing a laugh. Yet none of them moved for a moment. Inside, the imam opened his eyes. A strange calm washed over him, deeper than before. He stood slowly and said, almost to himself, "Allah is near." The words were barely spoken when the door finally burst open. Light from the moon spilled inside, and with it came shouting, weapons, and boots crossing the threshold. The test had begun. The door crashed open with a violent crack, splintering old wood and sending dust into the air. The sudden noise shattered the calm inside the mosque. The worshippers looked up in shock as armed soldiers rushed in, their boots striking the stone floor, their voices loud and sharp. Rifles were raised. One man shouted orders, another kicked aside a prayer mat as if it were nothing more than cloth. Fear spread instantly, not screaming, but heavy and tight in the chest. The women pulled the child close. The elderly man struggled to stand. The young boy clutched his father's sleeve, eyes wide, lips trembling. For a brief moment, chaos threatened to swallow the room. But the imam stepped forward, placing himself between the soldiers and the people. His hands were empty. His voice, though quiet, did not shake. "This is a house of Allah," he said. "There is no weapon here but prayer." The leader laughed harshly. "Prayer won't save you tonight." He gestured with his hand. "Make them remember this place." One of the soldiers moved toward the shelf where the Quran rested and knocked it to the ground with his boot. The sound of pages scattering across the floor felt louder than any gunshot. Several worshippers gasped. A woman whispered, "Ya Allah," her voice breaking. Another soldier stepped forward with the bottle of fuel. He splashed it along the base of the wall near the prayer area. The sharp smell filled the room. He pulled out a lighter, his thumb flicking the wheel. A small flame appeared, trembling. The imam closed his eyes and raised his hands. "Allahumma ihfazna," he whispered. "Protect us." The flame touched the fuel, but instead of rushing forward, the fire hesitated. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, in a way no one could explain, the flame bent sharply backward, away from the mosque and toward the soldier who held the bottle. He cried out in fear and stumbled back, dropping it. The fire skidded across the floor, rolling away from the worshippers, dying out against the stone near the door. Silence fell. The soldiers froze. One of them stared at his hands as if they no longer belonged to him. Another took a step back, whispering, "What was that?" The leader shouted angrily, "Do it again!" But his voice lacked its earlier confidence. His eyes darted around the room, unsettled. A cold wind swept through the mosque, though no window was open. It was not harsh, not violent, but powerful. Alive. The candles that had been lit earlier flickered wildly yet did not go out. Instead, their flames burned steadier, brighter. The air felt heavy, thick with something unseen. Then it happened. A soft glow began to spread near the front of the mosque, close to where the Quran had fallen. It was not blinding, not frightening. It was gentle, pure, and calm. The light grew, filling the cracks in the walls, touching every face. Fear drained from the worshippers, replaced by deep peace. Some fell into sujood without thinking, others wept silently. Among the soldiers, one young officer, Karim, felt his knees weaken. His heart pounded, not with rage, but with awe. He felt exposed, as if every secret, every sin stood open before Allah. He wanted to speak, to shout, to run, but he could not move. In that moment, everyone knew the same truth without words. This place was not unprotected, and the one who protects does not sleep. The light did not rush or explode. It settled into the mosque slowly, like dawn entering a dark room. It wrapped itself around the walls, touched the broken stones, and rested gently over the scattered pages of the Quran on the floor. The wind continued to move, soft yet firm, carrying a deep stillness with it. Every sound outside, the distant engines, the echo of boots in the street, seemed to fade away, as if the world beyond the mosque no longer mattered. The soldiers stood frozen. Their weapons felt heavy in their hands, useless. One of them tried to lift his rifle, but his arms shook so badly that he lowered it again. Another whispered something under his breath, a fragment of a forgotten prayer, but the words broke apart before they could leave his mouth. The leader, who had walked in with certainty and pride, felt his chest tighten. His confidence cracked, replaced by a fear he had never known before, not fear of death, but fear of standing exposed before absolute truth. Inside the hearts of the worshippers, something shifted. The terror that had gripped them moments earlier melted away. In its place came a deep awareness. Allah was near. Not in anger, not in noise, but in authority and mercy. The Imam fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Subhanallah," he whispered. "Glory be to Allah." The words felt small compared to what filled the room, yet they were all his heart could carry. Karim's breath came fast and shallow. His mind raced, but his body refused to move. He felt as if an invisible weight pressed gently against him, not crushing, but humbling. Memories rose without permission, faces he had hurt, orders he had followed without question, prayers he had abandoned. He wanted to look away from the light, but something inside him would not let him. For the first time in his life, he understood how small he was and how great Allah truly is. The Quran pages on the floor stirred slightly, lifted by the wind. One page turned over, stopping at a verse Karim had memorized as a child but forgotten as a man. Allah is gentle with his servants. His chest tightened. Gentle? After everything he had done? The thought broke him. His knees hit the stone floor, the sound sharp in the silence. No one ordered him to kneel, his body simply obeyed. Around him, the other soldiers began to falter. One dropped his weapon. It clattered loudly, then echoed as if the mosque itself were responding. Another covered his face with his hands and began to cry, shoulders shaking. None of them spoke loudly. The presence in the room demanded honesty, not noise. The leader took a step back, then another. His lips trembled as he tried to speak, but no command came. He looked at the Imam, then at the worshippers, then at the light that filled the space between them. For the first time, he did not feel powerful. He felt judged, not by men, but by something far higher. The wind slowed. The light steadied, no brighter, no weaker. It simply was. The mosque, once fragile and afraid, now felt unshakable. In that moment, a truth settled into every heart, soldier and worshipper alike. Allah does not need walls to protect his house. His presence alone is enough. And the night outside waited, silent, as destinies quietly began to change. The light slowly faded, not disappearing suddenly, but withdrawing with the calm authority, as if it had completed its purpose. The wind softened, then stilled. Sound returned to the world, the distant hum of the city, the faint crackle of dying embers near the door. The mosque stood exactly as it had before, cracked walls, worn rugs, scattered Quran pages. Yet nothing was the same. The soldiers backed away in silence. No orders were shouted, no threats were spoken. One by one, they stepped out of the mosque, heads lowered, faces pale. Their leader did not look back. Whatever had filled that room had stripped him of words. The street swallowed them, leaving behind a stillness so deep it felt sacred. Inside, the worshippers remained where they were. Some were still in sujud, foreheads pressed to the stone floor. Others sat quietly, hands resting on their knees, tears tracing slow paths down their cheeks. The imam stood and gently picked up the scattered pages of the Quran, placing them back on the shelf with reverence. No one spoke. They did not need to. Allah had spoken without sound. Karim lingered at the threshold. His legs felt heavy, as if each step away from the mosque required effort. He wanted to leave with the others, to disappear into the night and forget what had happened. But his heart refused. Something inside him burned, not with fear, but with a painful clarity. He glanced back once more at the prayer space, at the place where the light had rested. His chest tightened. He turned and walked away, but the distance did nothing to quiet his thoughts. That night, Karim could not sleep. He sat alone in his dark room, helmet on the floor, rifle leaning uselessly against the wall. Every time he closed his eyes, the same feeling returned. The weight of the presence, the verse he had forgotten, the way his knees had buckled without command. He pressed his palms against his face, breathing hard. "What was that?" he whispered. "Why won't it leave me?" He tried to distract himself. He washed his hands again and again, as if water could remove what had settled inside him. He paced the room, he sat, he stood, nothing worked. The memory followed him, calm and unrelenting. He realized with growing unease that it was not accusing him, it was inviting him. Karim thought of his childhood, of standing beside his father in prayer, of verses recited softly at dawn. Somewhere along the way, he had traded all of that for obedience and anger. He had told himself it was necessary. Tonight, that excuse collapsed. For the first time, he felt ashamed, not because someone saw him, but because Allah did. Near dawn, exhaustion finally pulled him to the floor. He sat with his back against the wall, eyes fixed on nothing. His lips moved without planning to. "If that was you," he whispered, voice breaking, "then don't leave me like this." Outside, the city remained wounded and restless, but inside Karim, something had begun to crack open. The man who had entered the mosque with power had left it empty-handed. In his place walked someone new, someone chased by truth, unable to outrun it. And though he did not yet know it, the path back to the mosque had already been written in his heart. The morning light crept slowly into Ghaza, pale and tired, as if the sun itself was burdened by what it had witnessed for too long. The city woke reluctantly. Shops opened halfway. Voices stayed low. Karim had not slept. When the call to prayer echoed faintly across the rooftops, he felt it strike his chest like a hand knocking from the inside. This time he did not ignore it. He washed his face, staring at his reflection in the cracked mirror. His eyes looked different, less sharp, less certain. He wrapped his jacket tightly around himself and stepped outside. Every street felt exposed. Every sound made him flinch. He knew what people would say if they saw him heading toward that mosque. He was a soldier. He was one of them. But something stronger than fear pulled him forward. The mosque appeared at the end of the lane, small and quiet in the early light. The wooden door stood closed, marked by the damage from the night before. Karim stopped a few steps away. His heart pounded. He almost turned back. Shame rose like a wall in front of him. But then he remembered the light, not accusing, not cruel, and his feet moved again. Inside, the imam was alone, sweeping the stone floor. The sound stopped when he noticed the shadow at the door. He looked up, eyes narrowing for a brief moment before recognition dawned. His grip tightened on the broom. Karim raised his hands slowly, palms open. "I didn't come to hurt anyone," he said, his voice rough. "I came because I don't know where else to go." The imam studied him carefully. There was no anger in his eyes, only caution and something deeper, understanding. "Why are you here?" he asked. Karim's breath shook. "Because Allah didn't destroy me last night," he said, "and I don't understand why." His knees gave way and he sank to the floor, head bowed. I stood against his house. I helped humiliate his book. And still, he stopped me. His voice broke. If that was mercy, then I don't deserve it. But I need it. The Imam set the broom aside and sat across from him. None of us deserve mercy, he said gently. That is why it is mercy. He reached for a copy of the Quran and placed it between them. Allah opens the door before we even knock. You were brought here for a reason. Tears fell onto the stone as Kareem pressed his forehead to the ground. He spoke quietly, stumbling over words he had not said in years. He asked for forgiveness, not loudly, not dramatically, but honestly. The mosque felt warm again, not with light this time, but with peace. When Kareem lifted his head, something had changed. The weight on his chest was still there, but it no longer crushed him. It guided him. The Imam helped him to his feet. This path will not be easy, Hizati said, but it is real. Kareem nodded. I don't want power anymore, he replied. I want truth. Outside, the city continued its struggle. Inside the mosque, one man's war had ended, and a harder, purer journey had begun. The change did not stay hidden for long. In places like Gaza, nothing truly does. Whispers moved through the streets, passing from door to door, from checkpoint to checkpoint. Soldiers talked in low voices about a mosque that did not burn, about fire that turned back, about men who walked out pale and shaken. Some laughed it off, others fell silent when the story was told. And eventually, the rumors reached the ears of a man who did not laugh at all. Colonel Rashid was not known for hesitation. He had built his authority on discipline and fear, and he believed that doubt was more dangerous than rebellion. When he heard that soldiers had withdrawn from a mosque without orders, his anger flared. When he heard that one of them, Kareem, had returned to pray, his jaw tightened. Faith makes men weak, he said sharply, and weakness spreads. He ordered his unit to move at first light. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the narrow streets as armored vehicles stopped near the same small mosque. People watched from behind walls and curtains, hearts pounding. They had seen force before. They knew what it usually meant. Inside the mosque, a small group had gathered again, fewer than before, but steady. Kareem stood among them, no longer in uniform, his hands empty, his heart heavy yet calm. The door burst open without warning. Soldiers flooded in, weapons raised, voices barking commands. On the ground, now! Women shielded their faces. An old man stumbled and nearly fell. Kareem instinctively stepped forward, placing himself between the soldiers and the worshippers. His body moved before his fear could speak. Colonel Rashid entered last. His presence filled the room. His eyes scanned the space, the simple walls, the worn Qurans, the men kneeling in silence. So, this is it, he said coldly. This is where discipline dies. His gaze locked onto Kareem. You, he said sharply. Step aside. Kareem did not move. This is a house of Allah, Kareem said quietly. His voice surprised even himself. We are not your enemy. Rashid laughed once, without humor. You dare lecture me? He raised his rifle and pointed it toward the front of the mosque, where the Quran rested on its stand. If your faith is real, he said, let it stop this. The room froze. A soldier nearby whispered, Sir, but Rashid cut him off. He tightened his grip and pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing happened. Rashid frowned and pulled again. Click. His face darkened with fury. He snatched another rifle from a nearby soldier and aimed once more. Enough games. The shot rang out, but the bullet did not reach its target. It stopped. Mid-air. Suspended between Rashid and the Quran, spinning slowly, catching the light as if held by an unseen hand. Gasps filled the room. Soldiers staggered backward. One dropped to his knees, another cried out in fear. A powerful wind surged through the mosque, lifting dust and prayer mats, yet leaving the Quran untouched. And then, just as before, a deep, overwhelming stillness fell. Colonel Rashid's rifle slipped from his hands. For the first time in his life, authority meant nothing, and the truth stood before him, undeniable. The bullet dropped to the floor with a soft metallic sound, rolling once before coming to rest near the prayer rug. That small sound echoed louder than the gunshot ever could have. No one moved. No one breathed easily. The wind that had surged moments earlier slowed to a gentle flow, circling the room as if it carried purpose. The air felt heavy, not with fear, but with truth. Colonel Rashid stared at the bullet on the ground. His hands trembled. He had faced death before without blinking, had given orders that ended lives without a second thought. But this moment stripped him bare. There was no enemy to fight, no command to give, no excuse to hide behind. The power he trusted had failed him completely. Then the light returned. It did not burst forth suddenly. It rose quietly, filling the mosque from the front to the back, touching every cracked stone and every bowed head. It was not blinding, yet no one could look away. It carried no heat, yet every heart felt warm. Soldiers who had stormed in with anger now felt their strength drain from their limbs. Some wept openly, others fell to their knees without understanding why. Rashid's chest tightened as if an invisible hand pressed upon it. His knees buckled. He tried to remain standing, to hold on to his pride, but it slipped away like sand. Slowly, unwillingly, he fell to the floor. His forehead touched the stone. The position was unfamiliar. He had forced others into it many times, but never himself. A voice filled the space, not loud, not harsh, yet impossible to ignore. It was not heard with the ears alone. It reached into the heart, cutting through layers of denial and arrogance. No weapon formed against what is mine will succeed. The words carried no anger, only certainty. Rashid's shoulders shook. His lips moved before his mind could stop them. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I thought strength was control. I thought fear was order." His voice broke. "I am Muslim, but I forgot you." Around him, soldiers laid their weapons down. Rifles clattered against the floor. Helmets were removed. Strong men cried like children. Karim stood silently, tears streaming down his face, witnessing what he himself had felt nights before. The same mercy, the same exposure, the same undeniable truth. The imam stepped forward slowly. He did not raise his voice, he did not accuse. He simply said, "Allah guides whom he wills." He looked at Rashid with compassion, and he humbles whom he wills. The light began to soften, slowly withdrawing, leaving behind a peace deeper than silence. When it faded, the mosque looked the same as before, simple, damaged, ordinary, yet every person inside knew they would never be the same. Rashid lifted his head. His eyes were red, his expression stripped of hardness. He looked at the imam, then at the people he had come to arrest. "Forgive me," he said quietly. "I came to break faith. Instead, my own was broken open." The imam extended his hand. "Allah's door is open," he replied, "as long as the heart is sincere." Outside, people gathered cautiously, watching soldiers exit the mosque without force, without shouting. Some embraced the worshippers, others walked away silently, shaken. Inside, men who had once stood on opposite sides now stood shoulder to shoulder in prayer. Power had come with weapons. It left with humility. And the house of Allah stood, untouched, unburned, and victorious. The soldiers left the mosque without shouting, without threats, without force. Their boots still echoed in the narrow street, but the sound was different now, lighter, uncertain. People who had hidden behind doors and walls slowly stepped out. They looked at the soldiers, then at the mosque, searching for signs of destruction. There were none. No flames, no broken bodies. Only silence, deep and unsettling. Inside the mosque, no one rushed to speak. The imam sat quietly near the front, his eyes closed, lips moving in slow remembrance. Karim stood among the worshippers, his heart full and heavy at the same time. He felt relief, but also responsibility. What had happened was not meant to end in that room. It was meant to change something beyond it. Word began to spread, not through loud announcements, but through careful whispers. The mosque still stands. The commander bowed. The soldiers put down their weapons. Some believed, others scoffed. In Gaza, hope was a dangerous thing, yet even those who doubted felt something shift inside them, a question they could not silence. In the days that followed, people came to the mosque quietly. Some arrived just to sit for a moment. Others prayed 2 quick units and left without speaking. A few stood at the door, unsure whether to enter, as if afraid of what they might feel inside. No one was turned away. No one was questioned. The door remained open. Karim returned every day. He prayed in the same place, head low, heart alert. Sometimes he noticed former soldiers standing in the back, faces hidden, eyes searching. No words passed between them. None were needed. They had seen the same truth. Colonel Rashid did not return in uniform. When he came, it was alone, early in the morning, before most of the city woke. He prayed without being seen, his movements slow and careful, as if relearning something he had once known. He left quietly, just as he came. Outside, the war did not stop. Explosions still shook the ground. Sirens still cut through the night. Children still learned to recognize fear too early. But something had changed beneath the noise. In that small corner of the city, people spoke more gently. Arguments ended sooner. Anger did not flare as quickly. It was not peace, but it was different. One evening, a man who had never entered a mosque before stepped inside. He stood awkwardly, unsure where to go. The imam nodded toward the prayer line. The man hesitated, then joined. Tears fell before he knew why. Karim watched and understood. This was how it spread. Not through force, not through fear, but through hearts that had been touched and could not return to what they were before. The mosque remained simple. Its walls were still cracked, its rugs still worn. But now it carried something invisible and strong. A reminder written not on stone but on people, that Allah's power does not always come with noise. That truth does not need permission. And that even in a city shaped by pain, a single moment of sincerity can begin a change no one can stop. The city remained broken, but something within it had begun to heal. Time moved on, as it always did in Gaza, slowly, heavily, marked by loss and endurance. The nights were still long and the days still uncertain. Yet the small mosque at the end of the narrow lane no longer felt like a fragile place waiting to be erased. It had become a quiet anchor, steady in a city that rarely stood still. People continued to come. Some prayed regularly. Others came only once, drawn by a feeling they could not explain. No banners were raised, no speeches were made. The imam never spoke of miracles. He spoke only of responsibility, of mercy, of restraint, of remembering Allah when anger seemed easier. What you felt here, he told them gently, is not meant to stay here. It is meant to shape how you walk outside these walls. Karim listened closely. His life had not suddenly become simple. He faced suspicion, questions, and moments of doubt. But each time fear tried to return, he remembered the stillness in the mosque, the way power had fallen silent, the way mercy had found him without conditions. He chose his words carefully now. He chose patience. When he felt anger rise, he stepped away and prayed instead. Colonel Rashid's name was spoken less often. He remained in his position, but those under him noticed a change. Orders were given with restraint. Punishments softened. Commands that once came with shouting were now delivered quietly. Some said he had grown weak. Others said he had finally grown strong. The mosque itself remained unchanged to the eye. Cracks still traced its walls. Its door still bore scars from past nights. But those who entered felt something solid there, a calm that did not depend on circumstance. Children sat near their parents during prayer, unafraid. Elders lingered longer than before. The space held them, as if reminding them that they were not alone. One evening, as the call to prayer faded into the air, Karim stood outside the mosque and looked up at the darkening sky. He did not see light, he did not hear a voice, and yet he smiled, because he knew now that not all miracles announce themselves. Some remained quietly, doing their work unseen. The city beyond the mosque still carried its wounds. There were nights of fear, mornings of grief. But in that small place, something firm had taken root. A truth stronger than weapons, a reminder deeper than anger, that Allah's mercy reaches even those who think they are beyond it, that power without humility cannot stand, and that a single sincere moment can redirect a life. As Karim stepped back inside for prayer, the Imam closed the door gently behind him. The mosque filled once more with soft voices and bowed heads. Outside, the city endured. Inside, the light remained, not visible, not dramatic, but alive in every heart that had learned to recognize it. And that was enough.